This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard. It's a real privilege to be with you today. We're super excited to have an awesome guest. The very first guest of 2024 is an absolute special person. I'm so glad we get to have her on the show today. So, what are we talking about today? We're going to be talking about something that I think is on the top of everybody's minds out there today. Today, we're going to be talking about neuroscience. Yeah, I know neuroscience may not be a word we all think about in that specific term, but neuroscience. Neuroscience is really about how the brain works and how to build stronger mental fitness, to be more resilient and be more productive. Let people live happier, better lives through neuroscience, right? This is about mental health. And in this country, in this world we live in, it's fast paced, it's ever changing. There's always something crazy going on. We all need health, good health, mental health, physical health. And I think we all neglect the mental side because we don't understand it as much as we do the physical side. So today we have the privilege of having an absolute expert in this space on the show. Today we have Wendy Swire here today. Let me tell you a little bit about Wendy. Wendy is an amazing lady. She's the CEO of Swire Solutions, which is a global executive and leadership coaching organization. She's also an author. She's also a keynote speaker and a certified expert in neuroscience and mental health. Wendy, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to spend time with you and your audience. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to have you. And this show is about helping people mentally, physically, and in whatever way that we can help them with tools and resources and just different ways of thinking and challenging them and getting them out of their daily grind and comfort zones or whatever, wherever they're at in their business or career. This is about giving people things they may not have, or giving people new ways to think about things, to set themselves up and navigate life's twists and turns better so they can have a better life. So Wendy, you've got an amazing background. You have an investment banking background, Wall Street background. You were an economist for the US Treasury Department. You've been a professor, and now you're a neuroscientist and a coach, helping people in so many great ways. Talk to us about how you got to where you are today. That's quite the journey.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those accolades. So first I want to put a couple caveats. I am not a neuroscientist. I'm not trained as a neuroscientist, but I've studied it and learned it on my own. And I work with neuroscientists. But I want to acknowledge that because there are the professionals in the lab who are like neurosurgeons. So, but I am a person, the journey really started when I've always wanted to help people and make a difference. And I actually really wanted to be a diplomat and work on issues of poverty. So I went to Wall Street to learn about economics and banking. I wanted to really fix some larger issues when I was younger and more idealistic. And that led me going after Wall Street. I went and I got trained as a diplomat. And when I was there, sadly, my father got diagnosed with cancer. And I really had a decision, did I want to live overseas as an economic diplomat? And I said, no, my family's too important. So that's what got me to the Treasury Department after my studies. And while I was in graduate school, I learned a lot of things on conflict resolution, negotiation. I had, this business background, but I got really interested in how humans communicate. How do people have conversations? And, my career has just, I've worked after I left the government, I started my firm, and I'm really interested as how do we bring out the best performance in people? How do we resolve conflict? And really, about 10 years ago, through almost like what your listeners are going to experience, someone handed me a book. They said, I thought you might be interested in it. And there's a little bit of brain science in it, and it just explained a lot. And the little nugget that I'll share with your listeners and you, Jason, is you cannot have a negative emotion and a positive emotion at the same time.
Hmm.
So if you are feeling joy, appreciation, gratitude, you cannot, the way the brain is wired, you cannot be angry, resentful, and upset. The wiring does not allow that. Now, you can be happy and then 30 milliseconds later switch to anger, right? But you can't really, the brain doesn't, the emotions are really chemicals and the way the pathways are. And I just said, like, wow, that is really interesting.
Hmm.
So everything in my career, I followed what's interesting to me. And I encourage people, if you are interested, whatever it is, let's say you're interested in finance, you're interested in artificial intelligence, you're interested in communications, just be curious. Curiosity is a superpower in the brain. Follow your curiosity. And that's what I've done in my career. And the last 10, 12 years, I've become this kind of brain geek.
Yeah. I noticed that, as I was getting to know you here recently, we've recently connected, and the brain geek. And so I'm curious. So speaking of curiosity, I'm more curious about this. How did you go from diplomat to, these, economists to,
Yeah.
kind of real world uh solving world hunger kind of problems to how the brain works? Like, did something happen, or is this just always something you've been interested in, or just like
Yeah.
how did you start getting into the brain and how it works and how
Yeah.
breaking all that down and
Sure. So basically, my journey is I was in finance, and then I did this work in government, and then I went off on my own and started my consulting firm in conflict resolution, facilitation, training, and then I became a coach, an executive coach. So I primarily, for the last 23 plus years, been an executive coach,
yeah,
working with corporations. I have some entrepreneurs and medium businesses, but very much corporations at the VP plus at C-suite level. So that's my work. As part of my work, I'm just a voracious learner. I just love to learn. I think everyone should know your strengths and lean into your strengths, which is really the work of strength finders. So for me, I'm just curious. I'm just
yeah,
really, and so when I read this book, it was not a, let me be clear. It was a leadership book, but they had a couple, this was a long time ago, but they talked a little bit about the brain. Emotional intelligence, which has been around for a long time. There's a
yep,
little brain science in there. So I want to basically say you don't have to geek out like me. There's a lot of wonderful resources that I will share. I'll be happy to share. We can put in the program notes of just basic brain science. But here's the thing, and this is why I got interested, and why all of the leaders listening to this podcast are going to want to soar higher. The brain is the most powerful information transfer system on the planet. Your
mm,
human brain. It's a 3 pound. It feels. I've seen it. I've held a brain. It feels like tofu. It's tiny, but every thought, every feeling, everything you've ever done, every emotion you felt, every spreadsheet, every book you've read, every anything you've done in your life has happened because of your brain,
yeah,
including your physical activity. It's a superpower. And once I realized, oh my gosh, I have this superpower in my brain, I just wanted to learn more about it.
wow,
So that really, and so if you think about all these wonderful things you've achieved in your life, you couldn't have done it without this little 3 pound mass in your this organ. You couldn't have done it.
wow. All right. Well, that's really cool. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way. And I didn't realize the brain was only 3 pounds. When you see pictures or like graphics or something, you think it's a
5
lot
pounds, maybe
bigger.
3 to 4 pounds. It's not that big. It's not 10 pounds. Maybe it's 3 to 5 pounds. I mean, it's approximately there, but it's not huge. It's small, and the
Yeah.
interesting thing is the brain consumes, like, 60% of the oxygen and glucose in your body. So do you wanna know why at 3 o'clock in the afternoon we get really tired?
Yeah.
We're working all day, and I'm a knowledge you're we're I'm sure, we're knowledge workers, right? So, um, I'm on the computer all day, and all of a sudden at 3 o'clock, I'm just tired. I've just been typing, reading emails, maybe in some calls, maybe working on a document. It's because my brain has just sucked the oxygen and glucose. The brain is an energy machine.
Wow.
You got to
It's like a
fuel your brain.
sponge. It's like just sucking
It's
it all
sponges,
up, huh?
yeah, exactly, which is one of the things I tell my clients is, are you hydrating? Are you feeding your brain properly? I'm very interested in physical fitness, but even for brain health and mental fitness, you need to take care of this organ.
Wow. Yeah, I think that is so true, especially in this world that we live in. It's everything's instant and fast, and I think we cheat ourselves. I think our brain. I think we've been conditioned just by the worldly things around us. The from social media to TV to just our work and our kids and our lives. It's just gotten everybody just feels busy and just like so many things going on at the same time. They used to call it multitasking, but I don't think it's merely multitasking. It's just piling on a bunch of stuff and trying to do it all at the same time. And I think we kind of starve ourselves, rob ourselves of, taking time for you. I think people lack the ability to give themselves permission to put themselves first a few times throughout the day to you know uh take a nap or to get something healthy to eat and drink and take a walk and just do something different to take care of you and not let yourself just be beat down like a dog at the end of the day. And so very exciting. So you started working with people in a consulting and a coaching manner, got to start working one-on-one and in groups with them. You're watching behavior. Like, what have you learned? Like, what are some of the big takeaways that you're getting from your clients and these companies you're working with and these groups? What are some of the big takeaways you're seeing? What are some of the big trends?
Yeah, and I think you really nailed probably the most important trend, which is everyone is on overdrive. You are not
Hmm.
I tell my clients all the time, you're not gonna get everything done. You are not gonna get through that to-do list. You're probably not gonna answer your emails, all of them. And if that's what you're doing, that in and of itself is that frenetic pace. It's slowing down. It's learning to become present, aware, and focused. What's the most important thing you need to do? And really, what I say is there's kind of the signal and the noise. There's a lot of noise out there. What's the most important signal that you really need to focus on? And to do that, you can't, as you said, have that kind of frenetic brain. So that's, I think, the first one, which is what's going to help you really sort through all of the emails and the Instagrams and your kids' needs and texting. That is really hard. By the way, those devices are designed, those algorithms in things like Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, they're designed to addict you.
Hmm.
By the
Wow.
algorithms are designed, they are addictive, and that is part of the mental health issues, as you mentioned, for our young people. They're on these devices and they can't, and they're comparing. So the first is, a couple practical tips. Yes, definitely think about taking breaks in the day. Your brain was not designed to be on this constant overdrive. This healthiest, and I say to my clients, if you want to be at cognitive peak performance, you want to be the best and the top of your game. Breaks are good for your brain. You're not wasting time. You're actually getting the most out of how your brain works. So breaks 1 minute breathing break, drink water, whatever it is, stand up and don't feel badly. You're actually giving your brain a chance to reset. Multitasking is a myth. The brain cannot multitask, the brain switch tasks. And a ton of interesting research about when you're multitasking and switch tasking, how much productivity goes down. So
Mm.
take those breaks. Obviously, figure out what I tell my clients, and this is what I do, and I'm sure you do as well. What's the most important thing? Three things I have to get done today. Those are stay focused on the most important, biggest rocks, your strategic objective, what's going to give you the biggest lift, and recognize that a lot of the other things are really robbing your attention.
Wow, that's powerful. I kind of think about things in simplistic manners sometimes because, that's just how I am. And I kind of liken it to this is what I've learned in my life. And I've met a few people that find this to be true for themselves as well. As a kid, have you ever, like filled your plate up with more food than what your eyes were bigger than your stomach kind of syndrome, right? Where you're like, oh my God, I'm hungry. And you're piling all the food on, you're at a buffet or you're at a Christmas dinner and there's just all this food and you're piling it up and you get like halfway through it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is, I can't finish it. And you're, if you have parents like mine are like, never waste food. Like, well, you put it on your plate, son, now you got to eat it. And you're sitting there for 3 hours eating until you can finally eat it all. Right. But what's the point there? Right. It's sometimes, many times, and I think it's even gotten worse over the past 10, 20 years is we keep filling our plates up with more stuff than we're able to deal with, right? And that's an analogy for life, right? I catch myself doing it even today, even as a coach, even as, somebody that's helping other people not do that. I find myself doing the same thing. I've got kids and dogs and a house and crap to do like everybody else, right? But the list of stuff either on a piece of paper or in my 3 to 5 pound brain, as you described it, there's just more stuff on that plate than what I can probably get done that day.
Yeah.
Running an errand and doing this task, and yesterday was like that. I spent yesterday outside in the freezing cold, taking all the Christmas lights down and all the Christmas stuff. And then I've got, a podcast to get ready for, and I got this going on. And then I took my daughter shopping and I was all over the place. I was worn out. Why? I put too much crap on my
Yeah.
plate.
I love
Well,
that.
how do you
Yeah.
deal with that?
So, first of all, you're a high achiever. I'm a high achiever. Your listeners were high achiever. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a high achiever and get a lot done. All right. So I want to people like, well, that's who I am. I get a lot done and I
Yeah.
stay busy. And I'm here in Washington, D.C. and the East Coast. We're busy. Everyone's running around. It's holidays. So I appreciate that. However, you can overdo it. You can overdo it, and not allowing yourself to pause and breathe and catch up. I mean, I tell my clients self-care is not selfish. It's actually required, particularly if you're a leader, if you're running a family, I'm a parent. So we are in a society that doesn't want us to believe that. But the more you learn about the brain and the more I put in my book, you become more present, aware, and focused on what's happening now. You'll realize, like, okay, I put too much food on that plate. What's coming off? Are the
Yeah.
potatoes coming off? I'm keeping the meat. I'm going to keep the vegetables. Like, you've got to make strategic choices. So one of the key differentiators of success, I think, in this century is it used to be time management. Well, that's kind of an old
Nope.
paradigm. It used to be energy management. Well, you have to manage your energy. And I like those paradigms. And now it's focus. And it's like, it's how can you stay focused? How can you realize of the 100 things I have to do, these are the three most important ones, and let the other ones and not beat yourself up. And when we beat ourselves up in the work of mental fitness, positive intelligence, those are saboteurs. They're not serving you. They're saboteurs. And We have a saboteur voice that plays in our head 24 hours a day. That's, you should be doing this, Jason. Why didn't you do this? What, you took the Christmas lights down. You should have been, working on marketing. Like, so you always have this 24-hour play, in your brain that's judging and criticizing, and learning how to quiet that is the work of mental fitness.
Wow. Yeah, you are spot on there, with people that I'm talking to on a regular basis. This the mental cycles, right? And you're right. It's not about time management. It's about priority management. So what are some tips you can give people that have too much on their plate and how to prioritize? People struggle with how to prioritize things and like, oh, family first, and they'll say what they think are the right things to say and it sounds good, but they don't do it.
Yeah. Well, look, there's a lot of different techniques as coaches we use. The first is get really clear on your values. Do a value
Mm,
sort. Hire Jason and do a value sorting exercise. Like, what's most important to you? If you say family first, and yet you're working all night long and on social media, and your kids are there with you, and you're not talking to them, and everyone's on their phones, is that what you want? What
mm.
do you want? I mean, get really clear on what's most important to you. And then, secondly, understand that your thought patterns are probably preventing you. Again, a lot of this is people don't want to have bad habits, right? They don't want to, be checking their phones all the time and not, paying attention to their family or working on their business or working on important projects. So a lot of it is what is getting in your way. And there's a very good chance it probably is, oh no, I can't stop. I can't stop. So if it's your own chatter, that you have to work on retraining. And that is, the way I would say this, Jason, is mental fitness and how you look at your thoughts is no different than physical fitness. We all go to the gym, we work out, we learn that growing up, we like to stay fit. You've got to keep your brain and your mental thoughts, you have to train them as well.
Well, that's excellent point. I want to segue into that. I want to go deep into that because I think that can be a huge benefit for people as we turn this new year. Everybody's got resolutions and goals, or at least they're saying they do, right? I think this is huge. One, how do negative thoughts or thoughts of you got more stuff to do keep working? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you good enough? Like where do those, kind of counter thoughts come in? How do they get there? Like when you're a baby and you're laying around in your crib and you're like, "Oh my god, I should be playing with more toys right now." Like where does that start? How does that get programmed in? And then what do you do about it? What are some ways you can prevent that or stop that or counter that?
So that's a really powerful question. Where do these thoughts come from? So let me just give you a tiny bit of brain science here. And
Yeah.
again, the brain is wired we are wired to be thinking about threat, insecurity, what's wrong, should I be concerned about that? That's our wiring, okay? To be looking at, the brain has a built-in negativity bias to keep you alive, right? So
Mm,
if you think about it on the savannah, back in the prehistoric times, right? If you're like, "Oh, I'm doing great," that, you wouldn't stay alive. But if you're like, whoa, this looks kind of dangerous, or I shouldn't eat this berry, or I can't trust this person, that keeps you alive. So some of that negative thought pattern was really designed by design in our human brains as a survival mechanism. So understand it's
interesting.
primitive wiring. All right. It's hundreds of thousands of years old, as we've been sapiens, but it hasn't changed in the last 50, 100 years with modern
Yeah.
technology. So that's the first thing. So recognize that some of this is just your innate neurochemicals and neurobiology. So
So
don't,
this is there. Some of these things are good. Like you
yes,
need
yes.
that, to see if something's a threat, or you're kind of keeping you alert to your surroundings, and so that's a positive thing, right? We want to keep
100%.
that, right?
Yes, absolutely. It keeps you alive. I tell people, but what happens is it kept you alive when there were physical threats or thing. If you're living in a part of the country or the world where it really is violent, you have to be careful. Absolutely. But if I'm just sitting here in the suburbs of Washington and I am just on Zoom calls or meeting with clients, where's the threat? The
Yeah.
brain does not know if someone, oh, that person didn't read my email or didn't copy me or I didn't get invited to that meeting. The brain still thinks that's a threat. It's no different in the brain. The
Wow.
brain cannot
Interesting.
distinguish. It can't distinguish a threat's a threat. So the brain really can't distinguish. Let's say it's a social snub, or you're walking down the hall, and someone doesn't say hi to you. You're like, oh, they don't like me. What's going on? That's threatening to the brain. So understand that it is like a razor trigger of a perception of threat.
So this
That
is
being
connected
said,
like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the rejection or the thought or the perception even of being snubbed or rejected or somebody looked at you wrong or your shoe was untied and somebody said something to you, almost like the sensitivities. And so are we more sensitive and in tune with that more today? It seems like with this politically correct world we live in, there's a lot of sensitivities around that, especially in a remote work environments or not.
yeah, I would say the following. I think we've always been that way, but the last couple years, obviously pandemic didn't help, everyone being home, everyone worrying about your physical health. That was a real
Right.
threat. That was threatening. I mean, that was really scary, for those who I've never lived in a pandemic. I think social media has made it worse. Social
Mm.
media has polarized. People aren't coming together to like, let's understand each other. I think, and again, it gets back to that kind of news sells. So you're going to get, and it's going to
Yep.
fire you up. I mean, I think the key thing is I would tell my clients and I tell your listeners, what are you consuming? What are you putting in your brain?
Ah,
So,
important
we're like,
question.
oh, are you consuming, really bad food all the time? Well, if I want to be healthier, are you can over drinking? Okay, what thoughts are you putting in your brain? And when I know I'm worried about something or something, I'm like, whoa, is that really a real threat? Okay, I didn't get invited to this meeting. Should I really be threatened about it, or is that my brain trying to keep me safe? And I think just taking the brain, you need basically something like 30 milliseconds to move from that primitive. We share that reptile, it's called the reptile brain, lower brain stem,
Yeah.
limbic system. You need time to get to this part of your brain, which is your C suite, your executive, where you can think and be calm and be more rational or be less wired. So there's like a hot brain and a cold brain, let's say, or the neuroscientists have described it lots of different ways. But if you want to say, like, you know what, someone didn't give me some feedback and I don't like it, it's kind of critical. Oh, all right, is that a real threat? Or no, is that so? You've got to get access. Your prefrontal cortex is what makes you human. Your cortex, you got to access that. You need about 30 milliseconds, which is
Huh.
not a long time, but in the long time for the brain to be able to move from that reptile, fiery, worrying, brain to the more C-suite, calm, planning brain. 30 milliseconds is a long time in the brain, but for us, it's taking a breath, it's having a sip of water, it's counting all the stuff grandma told you, count to 10, all those things that you learned as a kid. Grandma would say count to 10 or,
Yeah.
count that works. When you look at the neuroscience, and this is why this stuff is so cool, Jason, that's why it works. Because you're moving from reptile brain past, to C-suite brain. I hope I
Wow.
explained that in
That
a
is,
way.
yeah, no, that was great. You did a great job. You're great at breaking down, complicated scientific stuff into, stuff that everyday Joes like me and others out there can understand. So to me, now I got to ask a follow on deeper question. Inquiring minds want to know, can you control that? Can you recognize
Yes.
things coming in? When I kind of work with a lot of my clients, I said, you're wanting to, have a bigger business. You're wanting to achieve bigger, better things in your life, right? It's kind of like going from flying a Cessna at 150 to 200 miles an hour to flying a jet, at Mach 3, right? Like things just come at you faster. And so as things are, flying your direction and you're going forward in life and you're, having to make decisions and you're encountering different things happening around you in different ways that you may or may not be used to or comfortable with. As you're living your day-to-day life, can you train your brain to understand what you were describing is the back of the brain kind of way of thinking, like, okay, process, all this stuff's coming in through your eyes, your ears, and all your senses. Okay, that's a threat. I need to think about that this way, or no, that's really not a threat. And is there a way to train your brain to understand these things, categorize these things, and process these things more effectively than maybe we are today in this chaotic pace that we're at?
Well, that's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it? So here's the good answer. Yes, you can. You can. Is it easy? No, takes work. Can
Yeah.
you go from going to the gym and lifting a 2-pound weight to then going to bench press 100 pounds? No, you have to train. It's why it's called mental fitness. So the first thing is yes, but it requires, just like if you want to train, one of my sons has decided he's, running marathons. He's training all the time now.
Hmm.
In high school, he hated running, right? But he's learning because he's training. So this is not something I wish I could say, yep, this is read my book and it will solve it. No, you've got to get to work. You got to notice the patterns. You've got to stop them. You have to intercept and you've got to move to a positive thought pattern, which is the work of mental fitness. And in the show notes, we have a special landing page for your audience where you can learn a little bit more about that. So that's answer one. Answer two, you got to know your enemies, right? So I know, like, no different. You got to know what is the pattern that's really causing me to be in this primitive negative brain.
Hmm.
And is it am I judging myself too harshly? These are often called, your listeners and you, Jason, may have heard saboteurs, inner
Yep.
critics, inner gremlins. What are those? If you don't identify them, then they're going to take over. Okay. So the next part is I have an assessment that you can take 5 minutes for free about what are these saboteurs, and this is the work of Shirzad Chamine, who is my mentor and someone I work with.
Yeah.
How do you know them? Okay, so for my saboteurs are, everyone judges. We judge ourselves. We're pretty critical of ourselves. We judge others. But there's 9 other saboteurs. And some people are perfectionists. They're sticklers.
Hmm.
Some people are really people pleasers. They're always trying to take care of others, and that gets in
Yeah.
their way of soaring higher. Other people, I mean, there's many of these. There's hyperachievers. I'm a hyperachiever. I'm always going, going, going. Is it giving me the best quality of life? Is it making me happy? Until I learned this methodology, I would just go, go, go. Now I'm an achiever and I love helping people and doing wonderful things, but I'm not a hyperachiever. I'm not on that I'm not on that treadmill that never ends. So you've got to understand it. And then once you do this, the way this operating system works is you literally you notice the saboteur, you intercept it by typically what we call PQ reps, but you have to do something physical to move to that part of your brain that will quiet it. You actually have to take a breath, do something physical to change the thought pattern. We want to convert negative thoughts and emotions and patterns into positive. You've got to intercept and do the work.
So what I think I heard you say is, one, you've got to know you. You've got to do some more introspective on you if you haven't already, right? And there's, a lot of different tools and assessments out there. We talked about the saboteur assessment that you're offering. That's going to be, I think, offered for free on your site that we're going to put in the show notes. There's many other assessments out there, right? You've probably heard of DISC or predictive index and Hogan's and, you know, Enneagram and, some of these other things. And those are all good and well. They're all good starting points to understand you. What makes you tick? What really are your true talents and gifts? And how do you think? How do you make decisions? What motivates you or demotivates you? What stresses you? What energizes you?
What triggers you and what
And
triggers you and what puts you in that negative place? So, I love
yeah,
all those positives, but you've gotta know, are you an avoider? Are you avoiding things? That's a trigger.
yeah,
Are you that detail person? Are you a hyper rational? You've gotta know yourself, know thyself, Socrates, so you can then understand that's what's triggering me and putting me in that negative reptile, worrying, over,
yeah,
frenzied brain. Right.
yeah. And interesting enough, the more information you can get, the more informed you can be about you and who you really are based on the science and the science behind these assessments and other things, helps you understand and even, come to realities on some things you may or may not be aware of, or you may or may not want to embrace or admit, right? And so being honest with yourself and just um, looking through the lens of the science of who you are and what makes you tick, I think is a great first step, great suggestion. Because once you're informed on what that is, then how you make decisions and how you perceive things coming at you through the lens that you see the world can you can condition yourself differently, right? So let's say they get the assessment, let's say they learn about, everything about themselves that they did or did not want to know about themselves, and let's say they're informed. Like, what's the next step from there, Wendy? Like what do they need to do? Like, so, I just created a brand new, or not brand new, a different, physical workout thing for myself. I just started training with the new program this week myself, and I've got a regimen. I've got, on Mondays I'm doing this, and on Tuesdays I'm doing that, and I'm eating these things and drinking these things. Right? I've got a plan, right? So, how do you build a plan once you kind of know the details of the assessment? How do you build the plan to work on the mental stuff?
Yeah. So there's a couple ways you can do it. So in my methodology, I put my clients through this positive intelligence. It's a 7 week, we call it a boot camp, but it's really an intensive program of studying, understanding these patterns, and then doing the work, which just means throughout the day. And I do it, it's a program that I use that has an app. And so basically, throughout the day, it says, whoa, are you focusing? Like, let's take a break and focus. So the thing is, you build in like little micro breaks. This is the,
Mm,
tiny habits, or the power of, if you've looked at any of that work of tiny habits
yeah.
or atomic habits. So throughout the day, you got to stop. And the key thing here, though, it's got to be a physical, you have to be able to feel physical sensation to move and like intercept that. Remember, that negative, judgmental thought pattern, that inner critic, that saboteur is on autopilot. And it's really pretty powerful. So you've got to stop it and then say, I'm going to self command that saboteur is not who I am, or that's not serving me. I'm now going to convert it to a positive pattern. I'm going to convert it. So it's in the conversion of the thought. Every challenge or opportunity, every challenge, any situation in life, you can convert to a gift or opportunity. You have to train yourself
Wow.
to say any circumstance, challenge, whatever's throwing at your way, you are going to convert it to a gift and opportunity. But you have to train your thought pattern to say, okay, let's say you didn't win a piece of business or something like that. I know we have a business audience. Or as a parent, your child did something, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a failure. This is terrible. Oh wow, whoa, let's stop here. Let's pause. Let's do our PQ reps, which is the methodology. Okay, how can I convert this into a gift of empathy? How can this be a gift of exploration? Maybe I need to innovate. Maybe how are you going to learn from this? So we take these negative things that happen that are challenging us, and we say, you have to put a different lens on, but it requires stopping that negative. Remember, that negative part of your brain, you have an automatic ADT system wired in your brain
Hmm.
to keep you alive. So you've got to, whoa, put a pause on that. Now I'm going to convert it. It's about self command the thought. It just requires reps in the gym and just
Gotcha.
constant work. And I can tell you, I've done it for three years, and I've put, you know, hundreds of people through it. It's pretty powerful. I mean, it
Yeah.
works. Or I would not, I'm not the kind of person, if it didn't work, if I wasn't used doing this work myself, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. No, no doubt. And I've seen this, work in my life. I've seen it work in other people's lives. It's really fascinating and phenomenal and powerful, as you said. Give us a little bit of an example. Let's kind of bring it all together as we kind of start closing out the show today. Tell us a little story or an example of a client or a situation that you've been a part of where they were thinking a certain way and were in a certain place, and they worked with you, went through some of these things, and they came out the other end, and kind of the before and after, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many wonderful stories. So, yeah, it's just a great. So I have a wonderful client. He's a CFO of a company, and just really gets nervous when he's presenting in front of the CEO. He gets super nervous and he beats himself up afterwards. He's super smart, wonderful, just great leader. But every time he prepares for the CEO, and then the CEO is a sharp guy. He gets really not even intimidated, but he afterwards, if he doesn't answer a question a certain way, he'll come out of those meetings and just be upset and really beat him. I should have done this. I should have done
Yeah.
this. So very much judging himself. And I put him through this program, and he realized that that was just his negative inner critic, just saying, well, that, if you can't, your negative inner critic says you can't make a mistake in life. Well, that's not true. We always,
Yeah.
mistakes happen. It's what you do with it. And what he learned is he learned to do some physical work before meeting. So a lot of breathing, a lot of basically, simple mindfulness work almost. And then what he trained himself is, if a hard question comes at me, and he doesn't know the answer, to really lean in with more exploration and curiosity versus getting nervous. So it was converting it into, oh, wow, that's a really interesting question. I don't know the answer, but let me get my team to do it. And after the meetings, if something happened and it didn't go well, he learned that, like, okay, I'm going to learn from this. It's not failure. There's
Yeah.
no, it's not failure, it's learning. And so he stopped beating himself up so much because he was nervous, as we all would be. We all get
Yeah.
nervous. But I think the key thing is he just became, he just had more ease and flow and grace. He's like, I can't, if I don't know the answer, I'm going to say I don't know the answer. He put less pressure on himself. Now, again, it's not a life and death situation. I know you were in the military.
Yep.
Sometimes, no, that can't happen. You've got to be, there's no, you can't second guess yourself. But in this case, it's what he did afterwards it wasn't working. And he just now is doing beautifully with the CEO. He's more relaxed. He's answering better. He has more confidence. And this was a very successful this was a very successful executive.
Yeah.
But this little tiny thing was just really, he just wanted not to be so frustrated at himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very, self-critical and, lacking some confidence or some things there. Maybe wasn't getting enough positive feedback from the CEO or somebody to make him feel like he did. He's kind of, I've worked with people like that before. They're very busy and they're very, strong people. They're leaders, and you brief them on something else, and then there's a line of 10 people out the door coming in talking with the boss, after you leave, right? And it's just, and if you don't get positive feel, hey, great job, this is awesome, yeah, let's move forward, let's kick butt, take names, do whatever we need to do. If you don't get a lot of that reinforcement, which at the C-suite level you don't, in leadership, you're not going to get a lot of pats on the back. It's like, yeah, it sounds great, way to go, and you're out the door, and things just move too fast, right? And you don't get that reinforcement, then you second guess, like, well, did I did I please the boss? Am I still like, am I still seen in a positive manner? Like, does he agree, disagree? You start second guessing yourself when you don't even need to, right? There's a confidence there you need. And I think there's ways that you're working with him to build that and instill that. And so great job, great example. And I think very true. I know I see this all the time. You're seeing it all the time. And so if you're out there and you relate to this story, um, connect with Wendy. Take time to do an assessment and connect with Wendy and her neuroscience work and her mental fitness work. It's powerful. It can change your career. It can change your happiness. It can change your life. It really is that powerful. How you think about yourself, how you think about other things in the world is more important than anything else because that's the lens you see it through. So, Wendy, thank you so much for being here today. Really enjoyed this. I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface on this topic. Maybe we'll bring you back for a
Love
part two and
to.
we can
Love
go
to.
really deeper into this because that's so fascinating. And there's just such a need today. Like the world is just like everybody's stressed and busy and just
Yeah,
polarized world we live in. And we all need to think differently
I love
about
that.
our,
Yeah.
yeah,
Can I just leave one last comment for you and I would love to come back. Hopefully people, again, please, there's this assessment. If you have any questions, there's lots of resources for you listeners. The most important conversation you're going to have today, it's not with your boss, it's not with your CEO, it's not with your wife or spouse. It's the most important conversation you're going to have today is between your two ears.
wow. How true that is. That's powerful, Wendy. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing that and all your great work. I mean, this is important work. Like you are making a major difference in people's lives in the world that we live in to make it better. And so thank you for all your hard work and your sacrifice and research and study into this to really help people understand things differently. I know people are going to want to reach out. They're going to have questions. They're going to want to connect with you. How do they do that? What's the best way to connect with you?
So a couple things. First of all, it was this is my life's work is to help people understand, learn a little bit more about their brain so you can live happier, more productive lives and not just be so tough on ourselves in this world.
Yeah.
So if the special landing page is you'll see it swiresolutions.com dash soaring higher podcast. On that, you can find me, my emails there. You can, I'm here to help people. I'm a servant leader.
Yeah.
So I would love for people to keep in touch. If you're interested in that mental fitness program, um, get in touch. I have a lot of resources. And most importantly, this is what I'd love to do. This is my passion. So, you can Google Wendy Swire. There's only one of me, Swire Solutions. And the resources are on that landing page.
Outstanding. We're going to make sure to put all of her contact information, email, websites, the landing page, all these different things that can connect you to Wendy and her great work, and you can learn more. Uh, Highly encourage you to do that. Phenomenal, good-hearted person that's really dedicated her life to making a difference through neuroscience and mental fitness. So thank you for
Thank
that,
you.
folks. What a great show today. Thanks for tuning in. However, we're just kicking off 2024. We've got a lot more lined up for you to learn, to grow, to challenge yourself, to think differently for this year. Next week, we will be talking about something really, really hot, really important, and that is how to minimize your turnover and how to keep your top talent. This is a top of mind thing with business leaders everywhere. And we've got some folks on the show that I think's going to provide us some really good information to help us all in this space so we can all have a great 2024. So, Wendy, thank you so much. That's it for today. Have a great week, everybody.